All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are locked on Falcons. I am your host, Aaron Freeman. And today I am joined by Charles McDonald of Underdog Fantasy. And today we're going to be picking Charles's brain on the Falcons offseason so far, as well as get his thoughts on their upcoming 2022 draft plans.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, guys, you know me. I'm Aaron Freeman, been covering the Falcons for many years, formerly at FalFans.com. RIP, still going strong on Twitter at FalcFans. Of course, writing weekly content for the Falcoholic, the SB Nation website for the Atlanta Falcons. And, of course, the host of this world-renowned Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, right here on the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family. And I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Falcons their first listen each and every day. Like all the other shows on Locked On Sports Atlanta, you can find Locked On Falcons Monday through Friday, every single day on a variety of podcast platforms, including Apple, Odyssey, Google, Spotify, as well as the video version of the podcast on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Falcons YouTube channel, and you'll get the video version of the podcast the night before the audio version of the podcast drops. So that's just another reason to head on over to Locked On Falcons on YouTube and subscribe and hit that bell and give us a like while you're there. So, guys, we will get into the conversation with Charles McDonald of Underdog Fantasy, as well as the Exempt List Pod coming up, but I just want to give you full disclosure. We recorded this episode on Monday, and we finished recording, minutes before the Falcons officially signed Rashaan Evans, the former Tennessee Titans linebacker. And so that's why later in the episode, you'll hear Charles mention Rashaan Evans as if that isn't a done deal, because it wasn't a done deal at the time. I think it was like 30 minutes after we finished recording that Rashaan Evans signing was officially announced. So that's giving you a heads up. And because that transaction occurred on Monday and you've now gone Tuesday without us talking about Locked On Falcons, and we'll go now Wednesday, as most of you are listening to this, without us really talking about Rashaan Evans. Don't worry, we will get to Rashaan Evans, and that will be on Thursday's episode, which will be a mailbag episode. And we will also be joined by Locked On Titans host Tyler Rowland again to talk about another former Tennessee Titans player, and of course that is long snapper Bo Brinkley. And forget about Rashaan Evans. No, I'm kidding. We will get to Rashaan Evans on that podcast, and maybe we'll get to Bo Brinkley as well. So if you're like, where's my Rashaan Evans takes, that will be the bulk of Thursday's episode. So without further ado, let's get into that conversation with Charles McDonald of Underdog Fantasy right now. So today's episode, I am joined by Charles McDonald, who is joining us after a couple of months. Talked with us at the end of the 2021 regular season, giving his thoughts on the Falcons back then. And
Man,
now
things have only gotten worse.
Lots happened. A lot has happened since then, Charles. And we'll see sort of what Charles thinks of all that stuff that has happened. So I guess, Charles, what are your thoughts on the Falcons offseason so far? I know I went into this offseason thinking it would be pretty low-key, a little bit more proactive than they were last year, but just a pretty low-key thing, and then all hell broke loose. So I'm curious where you're at with it.
I think my first thought is like, it's just funny. I don't know. It's just funny. Like, of course. I think the best way to encapsulate it is that Calvin Ridley getting suspended for a year was somehow not even close to the biggest Falcons news of March. It's been a lot so far. The question, what I think of the offseason, like it makes me think about this tweet thread I had with Dave Choate, the Falcoholic, a couple weeks ago, where I was just like, mimicking someone on life support and saying, Calvin Ridley, Matt Ryan stuff aside, I've kind of liked the offseason. It's been all right, just if you can somehow just black out not having Matt Ryan anymore. And I mean, Calvin Ridley, he's never going to play here again. Like, that's done. If you can just black out, those two events happening, I kind of like some of the free agency moves they've made. I don't know if they've brought in Rashaan Evans full time, but I think that'd be a nice little pairing. Hopefully, they can get at least one real linebacker playing back there next year. But I think it's just frustrating because they didn't do the rebuild the right way, and they tried to go all in Deshaun Watson. They thought they had it. Did you see the picture of him with the Browns jerseys yesterday on Twitter? And did you see the Falcons jersey in the back of the like that's kind of where we're at with the Falcons offseason. Yeah, I mean it's largely been a disaster, but I've liked some of the free agent signs. Casey Hayward's cool. You got Cordell Patterson back. It's kind of weird because I don't really know like what the expectation should be moving forward. Like I don't know. You're just kind of in no man's land. So I guess my standpoint from the offseason is we've lost a lot of cool players over the last few years. Let's try to get some cool players back on the roster, and that's all I got, man. Like I feel like there's not much more to expect at this point.
There you go. So we'll see if they can add some cool players in the draft, and we'll pick Charles's brain on sort of where he thinks the team, what directions maybe the team should go with some of these picks in the upcoming 2022 NFL draft. But before we get there, guys, I do want to plug the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family, where you can find 3 new shows on a daily basis, Monday through Friday. You're still getting Locked On Falcons, Locked On Hawks, Locked On Braves, Locked On Bulldogs, but you're getting 3 more shows devoted to Atlanta sports, as well as, any sort of national headlines. I know John Chuckery on Hard Hitting was talking about WrestleMania. So if you want to get, some wrestling thoughts, you can go check that out again on the Locked On Sports Atlanta family. And you can find that on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Odyssey, Google, Spotify, or of course, as well on YouTube. And guys, I also want to tell you about Shady Rays, an independent sunglasses company that is giving you the features of a $200 sunglasses for a fraction of the price. And you're probably wondering what features. Well, what about polarized lenses, durable frames, and premium high-end finishes? And also something that you're not going to find anywhere else is Shady Rays' Insane Protection Program, which includes a lot of broken protection on every pair. They'll send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. Give it a try. And if you don't love Shady Rays sunglasses, you'll pay nothing. It's that simple. In addition to looking good, you can help support a good cause, because for every order that Shady Rays does, they donate 10 meals to fighting hunger in America. So head to shadyrays.com and use the promo code Locked On, and you'll get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's code Locked On for their best deal of the season, 50% off 2 or more Shady Rays sunglasses. So, Charles, I want to talk to you about the Falcons 2022 draft strategy. And I've already talked with a couple of people, and I'll probably continue to talk with several people as this month unfolds to sort of pick their brain on what they think the Falcons should do when it comes to sort of best player available versus needs. We know that the Falcons have a lot of needs, so they, essentially the best player available could be any position. But do you feel like there maybe should be a little bit more targeted on maybe some of the premium positions like quarterback, like edge rusher, like wide receiver, or, does it make sense for them to continue to look at offensive line or safety or, tight end or whatever the case may be? Where do you sort of fall on that sort of fence?
Honestly, at 8, I would be down basically for any position that's not like tight end or running back. Because this roster, like they just need so many. They need so many pieces. So I'm not really picky. I think for me, like I think one of the blessings of being a Falcons fans over the past few years is it's pretty easy to be honest with yourself and where like this team is. Because what's the point in lying? I mean, you already experienced the worst that you can experience being from the Super Bowl on now. I mean, if you're still here, everyone's looking at us like, why are you still there? We're like, we know it's bad, but we're still over here. So I feel like let's be honest with ourselves for a second. This team is really like, this is about to be a super duper rebuild. I mean, I don't really care like what position they go after, but I think just for me, if I'm just gonna stick with my theme of like just wanting cool players on the team, and building out a cool position group, I think they have a kind of an interesting opportunity at 8 if they feel comfortable with like the medicals on Derek Stingley, or if they like Sauce Gardner, the Cincinnati cornerback. You kind of have Yeah, I don't think it's going to make you playoff contenders or anything, but if guys can stay healthy, you're looking at a CB trio that's AJ Terrell, Casey Hayward, and potentially Derek Stingley or Sauce Gardner. That's kind of fun. That's kind of fun to think about. Especially with some of the front seven woes that they're going to have, and I think just with the Falcons, I think with where the Falcons are, you're in such the early stages of a rebuild. I also think it kind of makes sense just to play the strengths of the draft, like at the top. Like, you don't have to sit there and reach for like Desmond Ridder at 8, even though I like him. I would not be thrilled about taking him at 8. Just take the best player on the board. But I think if you're looking at like just kind of what you can build, and even if you're looking at a long-term scenario with having AJ and someone like that on cheap deals for the next 3 years before AJ needs to get paid, that's kind of an enticing option for the Falcons when you think about one, who knows how long Tom Brady's going to be playing, so it might help to have someone else back there with AJ, because I think we saw a lot of times last year it got a little lonely for him when he was, when other guys were getting picked on. So I just think they're kind of in a unique spot to really strengthen that cornerback room with two potentially like elite cornerback talents at really cost-controlled contracts.
Now, my next question I want to ask you is about two picks that will, I think, go a long way to energizing the local fan base. If the Falcons were to pull off either one of these two picks, potentially at pick number 8. One of them is Malik Willis, the quarterback at Liberty, who is, a local guy. And we know that the Falcons, at least a couple of weeks ago, seemed like a team very interested in trying to add a local quarterback to the roster and did not necessarily, make that move. And then the other one is, because I know I know you're a Georgia guy. What about Jordan Davis, right? Where are you at with sort of Jordan Davis as far as potentially the 8th overall, or is that more of a player that you would feel better about if the Falcons were to move back in the draft and get him? Where are your thoughts on Jordan Davis or Malik Willis at the top of the draft?
Jordan Davis, I love him. I think he's great, and I don't know. I think some of the conditioning things are a little bit overblown sometimes, because when you evaluate college football, I think you have to kind of think about there's 3 schools that are basically playing different sports than everybody else right now. It's Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia. So you kind of have to take some of these. I think sometimes you have to look at the production within like that or through that lens, because Georgia, they have 6 5-stars on the defensive line. So I don't need Jordan Davis to play 50% of the snaps. I can get him to play 20%, because I know when I take him off the field, the drop off's not gonna be that far. When you look at Ohio State and the receivers that they've put into the league over the past few years, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, they might not have the craziest stats in the world, because they're also playing with another first-round receiver and other guys to throw with, or and I think honestly, like, that's kind of what makes the Bama receivers from a few years ago so cool, because all of them put up numbers. But I think when you look at Jordan Davis, I'm not really that concerned about conditioning stuff. To me, it would still be the pass rush stuff, because I know he's just an alien athlete, basically the best athlete to ever step on the combine field for being a defensive lineman. It's around 4'7", 6'6", 340 is ridiculous. So I would get it just from like some holy shit. Like you just don't have the opportunity to find people this big that move like this very often. But I still do think there are concerns about some of the pass rush stuff, because it wasn't always there for him. But I do think there's enough that you can convince yourself that you can get there just with the tools. And like there are some clips out there where he's got some good pass rush stuff. Willis at 8, I gotta say, I don't get it with the Malik Willis stuff. I don't get it. Like I'm happy for him, because I think that black people deserve to be average too. But and hey, look, if someone like Sam Darnold can go number 3 overall, why can't Malik Willis go number 2 overall? So that's kind of how I feel about that. I know it's a pretty wild thing to say, but that's how I feel about that. But like when you look at him on the field, man, dude, I think he's just so far away from being a starting quarterback, and I find it interesting that there hasn't been that much discussion around like the offense he plays in, and kind of basically just a lot of an inability to read the field to me, and like just leaving a lot of yards in the field. And I know that he's playing at Liberty, so your teammates aren't always going to be the best, and there's definitely some supporting cast issues. But you're also playing against Liberty's schedule, and to me, like if you're going to be a top 10 pick, I would just like to see a little bit more. If you're going to be playing against that level of competition, I understand that, especially in a class like this, he's going to get pushed up because he does have like the ridiculous arm speed, he can run. But I think if you draft Malik Willis at 8, it's a good thing you have Marcus Mariota, because I don't think that Malik Willis is even close to beating Marcus Mariota in a camp battle right now. So that would be an ultimate dice roll. But again, if we go back to what I want for the offseason, it would be kind of cool if he worked out. But if he doesn't, I just don't even think you can really be surprised by that.
Well, I think our good friend Jalen put it well. He just wants fun players because it's going to be a rough season. Right?
It's going to be a rough couple seasons, I think. So unless they get back into the free agent market next year with a huge splash. But I mean, for this year, I don't really even know. Like, what are you hoping for? I hope that Marcus doesn't get hurt. That's all I
got. With Malik Willis, you kind of touched on it. It feels like, Josh Allen walked so that Malik Willis could run. And it feels like everybody's just kind of like, well, Josh Allen had a lot of these issues and he worked out, so no reason to question it. And part of me wonders, like, as we get further and further away from that 2018 draft and watch Josh Allen and what he's done, where, after the AFC Championship game, I was prepared to be like, he's the best quarterback in the league. But like, we might just be dealing with Josh Allen is just an outlier, and while he's proven that it can be done, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be done. Because I mean, even Aaron Rodgers, you look at him as a player that people are like, I don't really like his arm strength, and I don't really like these things and various, aspects of his game. And he improved, basically sitting the bench for 3 years. And you can make the case that Aaron Rodgers is an outlier. And so like these outliers seem to come, 10, 15 years apart, as opposed to 3 or 4 years apart. So part of me sort of wonders that if you're taking Malik Willis that high, you are fully invested in the idea that you can replicate Josh Allen's success that he had in Buffalo.
It's tough. I think but I do think like if you're a team like the Falcons and you're at the very beginning of this, I mean, there's worse things you can do than make the dice roll. As long as you can be honest with yourself next year, when you're back up, like if I would be okay with Malik Willis at 8 if the Falcons can go into this and say, hey, there's a chance we might have to Kyler Murray this next year. Like if they can be honest with themselves and do like what the Cardinals did with Josh Rosen, like if it gets to that point, not saying that it would, like if it gets there, I'm cool with that, because you're still so far away from like putting together a competitive roster. This might be a decent spot to take a dice roll like that if you're not afraid to rip the Band-Aid off early if something better comes along.
Well, with Will Anderson in next year's draft, I would be highly skeptical that would be the case if the Falcons got a top 3 pick and took Malik Willis. So,
that's a good point. Can he play quarterback, Will Anderson? I bet he could.
Probably.
He probably could.
Probably. He's a good enough athlete, so he definitely could do some stuff.
Ridiculous football player. It's crazy because I've been so busy. Like I literally just started watching draft prospects for real like the past week or so. And every time I watch Alabama, I'm like, holy fuck, that guy is so good. Like he is so damn good.
It's weird because Alabama never has good edge rushers, right? And he's like all of the good the players that the Tim Williams, the Ryan Andersons, whoever else they had back in the day that people thought were going to be good. It's like he's
that guy.
He's everybody combined into one prospect.
He should have been at the Heisman ceremony over Aiden Hutchinson. He had like double the TFLs and more sacks, I think. Like they're just it's kind of weird. But I think the Aiden Hutchinson draft complex I could do a whole podcast about.
Okay. So even though Charles has only begun his process, we will pick his brain a little bit further on today's episode and see if there are any players that have already jumped out for this upcoming draft class, as opposed to the 2023 draft class, that he would love to see in Atlanta. And we'll get into that as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. But before we get there, guys, I do want to plug the Locked On NFL podcast, which you can find on all the same podcast platforms that you find Locked On Falcons, including on YouTube. So, guys, I also want to tell you about the protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. And, of course, if you're a longtime listener to Locked On Falcons, you know I'm talking about Built Bar, and Built Bars are even better than a candy bar because they not only taste good, but they're good for you. They're low in sugar, calories, and carbs, high in protein. Built Bars are all about the puff flavors. The puffs are the first protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, marshmallowy goodness. And like all Built Bars, the puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate, and you get a variety of puff flavors such as churro puff, banana cream pie, coconut marshmallow, and more by heading over to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 when you get there so that you can get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. So, guys, wrapping up today's episode here with Charles McDonald of Underdog Fantasy. You know, Charles, you already mentioned that you only begun the process of evaluating some of these prospects. I know this is a far cry from back in the day when I think the first time you were on Falc Fans podcast back in like 2015, where you were neck deep in scouting prospects way back in that draft.
I don't got time for that anymore.
Yeah, you got to dust off your old Marcus Mariota draft takes, from way back then as well. Now that he's a Falcon, but have there been anybody that's sort of emerged for you so far in this process that you really like and say that guy would be very intriguing here in Atlanta?
I mean, if you're just gonna stick with the Georgia defense, like that's definitely what I know best at this point. Because one, I'm a fan, and I, like if you just want to watch just a clobbering ass defense, like you have to watch them. Like even if you're not scouting, just to watch good defensive play, it's ridiculous. But Lewis Cine, the safety, if they're ready to give up on the Richie Grant project, which is don't really care either way. Like if I think that guy is going to be a star, and I watched the tape, and the more I watch, to me, he's such a key figure for what Georgia was able to do this year. Because like the fact of the matter is, for that defense is, they didn't have great corner play or great edge rushers for that defense. Like it was all built straight up the middle with the defensive tackles, linebackers, and then Cine on the back end, and guys like Chris Smith. But Cine can play the alley, he can play too high, he can play single high. He's got the speed to really play and cover ground over the top of the defense. Like I think he's the guy that can really do it all. And not only that is, it would just be refreshing to have someone as good of a tackler as he is in Atlanta. Like the guy, like when he's coming downhill or making plays at the catch point, he just doesn't miss a whole lot of tackles. And I think for a defense that really could use pieces of talent anywhere on the field, I don't really think that there's a bad position to take, like especially once you get out the first round. But Lewis Cine, I would love to see him in Atlanta, just because I think for where like the NFL is going and the quality of safety play you need, I just think he's a perfect guy, especially with how Georgia deployed him against some of these RPO systems that you see all over the college level. I would kill to see him in Atlanta.
Yeah, I always say, like, if you can run and you can hit, you can play safety in the NFL. I mean, that's the basic components, and he can definitely run and he can definitely hit. And you talk about having a player of his caliber and getting an enforcer for the Falcons defense. And the Falcons have always seemingly had that, and their defense is we know the Falcons haven't necessarily had the greatest defenses over the last 10, 15 years, but they always seem to have that type of player.
The last 20 years,
Yeah, but like you go back to like Lawyer Malloy and Willie Moe and Keanu Neal, and it always seemed like when all those guys were playing at a high level and healthy and all those various things, that this defense did play at a different level. And I think Cine could bring something similar to the table in that regard.
I mean, there's a lot of guys, even if you're talking about like a day 2 guy like Channington Dahl, that'd be intriguing just because he can run. Quay Walker, the same thing. Because I think we look at Quay Walker, he's a guy who's 6'4", 240, runs a 4.5 inside linebacker. Yeah, I still think he's, feeling out some of the game in coverage, but when it comes to just popping someone in the mouth, I just don't think you're going to find many people that are better than him. So the Georgia defense, I don't really think that you can go wrong with really any of the prospects that they have in the draft this year. But Lewis Cine is a guy that I would love to see in Atlanta.
And I imagine, when it comes to Georgia offensive players, you're all about Stetson Bennett in next year's draft, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely thrilled that he came back. Definitely, yeah. Look, I mean, whatever. It is what it is. But hopefully in a few years we can see Brock Bowers and Kyle Pitts playing before Kyle Pitts demands a trade to another team.
For a 3rd round pick, right?
Yep. Maybe we'll get a 4th round this time. Who knows? Kyle Pitts, fire sale, 4th round pick.
There you go. Charles, any other players that intrigue you?
No, not yet. I'm fine.
Okay.
I really have not gotten started. I know it was crazy. Like I was because the biggest thing is I've been putting together this podcast for like the past month, and I was on Twitter last week, and I think I saw someone tweet, "We are 4 weeks away from the NFL draft." I'm like, oh, okay. Didn't realize that because I didn't go to the combine this year because I had some crazy job transition stuff. And I've just been kind of at the loop trying to get this podcast off the ground. So it really just fell completely out of my view this year.
Okay. All right.
So now I have to cram.
No worries, man. Well, let the people know, when that podcast is going to drop and, hopefully unlike the last podcast you were hosting, maybe it'll be a little bit more regular in terms of when it drops and where else people can hit you up if they do want to get your takes on some of these prospects as the next couple of weeks unfold and you actually start looking at them.
Yeah, my podcast now, the Exempt List, is attached to my salary and health insurance, so I will definitely be doing that on a regular schedule because those things are very important to me. This will not be like setting the edge, because if it's like setting the edge, I won't have a job in a few months. And that's not good. But yeah, the Exempt List drops April 6th on Wednesday. I literally just finished putting together the last of it before I got on here. I got 24 people on for the first episode. It's pretty ridiculous. Like it's obviously it's gonna be a lot of names you recognize. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm gonna have to put timestamps so people can skip around to listen to what they want to hear. But obviously, me being a Falcons fan, there's a lot of Falcons stuff in there, including a story about Dominique Foxworth and the playoff game they lost to the Arizona Cardinals in Matt Ryan's rookie year. And then at the end of the show, I talked to Jamal Anderson for about 15 minutes, and we basically just ranted about how screwed up things are right now. So, yeah, there's definitely a good amount of Falcons talk in there because it's my show. And it's funny because I was talking to someone this past week, and they were like, they were in Las Vegas, and I asked them to bring me back. A Raiders hat, and they were like, "Wait, don't you like the Falcons?" It's like, whoa. Let's stop with the accusations here. I don't like the Falcons. They're just my favorite team. Like there's a clear distinction, okay? I do not like them, but they are my favorite team. I will be there week 1, Sunday, 1 p.m., watching them get their ass handed to by whoever the hell they're playing. And by the time Saturday rolls around, I will have rinsed all that shame off of me, and I'll be back for week 2. But no, I don't like them. It's just something I can't shake.
There you go. That's perfect way to end the podcast. Guys, go check out Charles's Exempt List podcast, which I believe we should be dropping the day that this episode is airing, at least the audio version of the podcast. So go check that out on your preferred podcast platform. And Charles, really appreciate you coming on. And, hopefully maybe during the summer we'll have you back on and get your thoughts on what the Falcons actually did in the draft, as well as, that shame that you will be ultimately rinsing yourself off as we prepare for what may be a pretty rough season.
last thing I have to say, let's just hope the Falcons 2022 draft class is better than 2021. It's not a high bar to jump. Like, come on.
It's not setting the standard particularly high. So yeah, man, we'll see how that goes. Charles, again, always appreciate shooting the stuff with you on Locked On Falcons, and look forward to our future conversations. So guys, that's going to do it for us here. Again, want to again remind you guys that tomorrow's episode we'll be talking quite a bit about Rashaan Evans with Locked On Titans host Tyler Rowland. There's also an opportunity for you guys to submit your mailbag questions. If you want to hit me up on Twitter at Locked On Falcons, on Facebook at Locked On Falcons, you can send an email to lockedonfalcons@mail.com or leave a comment here on the Locked On Falcons YouTube channel for Thursday's episode, tomorrow's episode. And of course, before we duck out of here, I do want to remind you guys to check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast, where you can get your daily coverage of all things with the 2022 NFL draft. And while Charles hasn't necessarily taken a deep dive into this upcoming draft class quite yet, you know the guys, Ryan Tracy and Eric Crocker, have done so, the two hosts of Locked On NFL Draft. And you can find that, of course, on your favorite podcast platform, as well as you can also find for your other recommendations for your second listen. In addition to Locked On Hawks, Locked On Braves, Locked On Bulldogs, Locked On Falcons, go check out the new shows on the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family. That's ATL Day Ones with Jarvis Davis and Tanisha Batiste. There's also Hitting Hard with John Chuckery and A to Z with Mark Sino. So find them all on the same podcast platforms. You can find all the Locked On Podcast Network shows. So guys, that will do it for us here. Appreciate it. Till then.